Let's talk about the available options that we have whenever we want to create an adaptive card extension and we want to focus on the card view types. In fact, whenever we create an adaptive card extension, at the very beginning, the very first content that we get created through the scaffolding tool, the human generator for SharePoint framework, is an adaptive card extension with a card view and the default quick view. And talking about the card view, we always see the options to choose between 3 different flavors of card view. In this short demo, we will figure out what these card view types are and what are the differences between each of them. So first of all, we have 3 options: the BaseBasicCardView, the BasePrimaryTextCardView, and the BaseImage which are the actual base types that we will inherit from when we will create any card view in an adaptive card extension. All of them have a base class, which is called BaseCardView, and which is defined through some generic attributes like the interface defining the properties and the state of the adaptive card extension. And we will dig into these topics in one of the upcoming demos too, as well as an interface defining the basic card parameters for the card view. And depending on the layout of the basic card parameters, we will have the 3 different flavors of the card view. So the basic, the primary text, and the image one. An important thing to know is that whenever you create an adaptive card extension, you can only rely on these 3 different flavors that we have out of the box, and you cannot create your own custom card views. At least I would like to say, so far, hopefully in the future, someone will make the choice to make it possible. But right now, that's what we have. So that's what we can talk about. So what do I mean? Well, when I create a new SharePoint framework solution in order to create an adaptive card extension using the human generator, as we saw a couple of weeks ago in the previous demo about the adaptive card extensions. Okay, we choose the solution name, we target SharePoint Online, we can target the current folder, we can make the solution tenant-wide available, and eventually we can use isolated permissions, and then we can choose what kind of component we want to create. And when we select adaptive card extension, here we see 3 different options. As you see, basic card, primary text, and image card. So now let me dig into each of them and let me explain you what the main capabilities and features are for each of them. So first of all, let's focus on the BaseBasicCardView, which is the really simple one. In this scenario, you can create a card view, and it will be automatically created for you by the scaffolding tool, a card view, which will simply have a configurable property called primary text, which will be rendered in the main as the main content of your card view. And users using your card view will be able, configuring the adaptive card extension, to configure just the title and the icon of the adaptive card extension, which will be shown in the rendering, in the default rendering of the card view, plus your primary text. What do I mean? Well, I have a SharePoint framework solution that I already created, where we can see this option in action. First of all, let me use the workbench just to show you the actual result, and then we will see the code scaffolded. So let me get the basic card sample, and here you can see this is my adaptive card extension. This is the card view. I can eventually have, and in this auto-generated one, I already have a quick view. So here, when I configure my adaptive card extensions, I have the capability to configure in the property pane the title and the icon, which will be the title and the icon which will be used for all of the card views rendered for this adaptive card extension. And then I can eventually control by code the content of the primary text, this area. And as you can see, I can configure this card as any other adaptive card extensions to be rendered as a medium size or as a large size. And just as a reminder, when we are in large size, we can have two buttons. In medium size, we can have up to one button rendered. So if I switch to Visual Studio Code to show you the generated code, here we have the adaptive card extension, and I will not dig into the implementation details of the adaptive card extension because we already covered them in the previous demo a couple of weeks ago, but I have a card view which is generated by the scaffolding tool. Well, as you can see, this one inherits from BaseBasicCardView, and as you can see, we have this get data, which will return an instance of iBasicCardParameters interface, which only provides a primary text property, which will be the value that we see in the UI of the card view right here. So whenever you simply want to show a simple text message inside the card view, you should choose to use the basic card layout. Keep into account that when you create an adaptive card extension, you can add as many card views and as many quick views as you like. So this one is just the auto-generated one when you go through the scaffolding tool, but then you can add additional ones simply creating your own TS files and adding your own card views and registering them. So this is what we have out of the box with the BaseBasicCardView. What else? Well, we can also use and have the BasePrimaryTextCardView, which is slightly different from the previous one. In fact, we have not only the primary text, but we also have a description that we can use to render the content of the card view. In this scenario, the user can still select an icon and a title for the adaptive card extension, which will be used also to render the card view. But what is interesting is that we can configure two different sections to different text areas inside the rendering of the card view. Again, if we go back to the workbench, I can remove this one and I can add the primary one. And here we can see now we have the primary text and the description. The description is something that by default the user can also configure from here, but of course you can change your implementation and provide the content programmatically instead of using the UI. And again, you can play with medium and large size to render your card view. Again, from an implementation point of view, let me close this one and let me dig into the primary text. The card view will simply inherit from BasePrimaryTextCardView, and in this scenario, the getData method will return an instance of a type implementing the iPrimaryTextCardParameters, which will be at the very end the data source that you will bind to the predefined rendering of your card view. In the definition of this interface, we simply have the primary text and the description. And again, here programmatically, you can render a content coming from a resource string like I'm doing right now, or you can read something from the state or from the properties of the adaptive card extension. It is up to you. The third and last option that we have is the one that allows us to render an image card view, which is the card view inheriting from BaseImageCardView. And here we can manage the primary text as well as the image. And this is, from some degrees of perspective, in my opinion, one of the most interesting card view options, because we have quite some things to keep into account. Like, for example, when we provide the image, we can either provide the URL of an image, or, as I will show you shortly, you can also use an embedded image, which will be embedded in your solution, and using the required syntax, you will be able to render an image embedded in your solution. You should also keep into account that when you configure the rendering of your adaptive card to be with medium or large size, the behavior of the rendering of your image will change. And in fact, in the medium one, the image will be rendered at the top, and the size will be the one you see here, 164 by 80. And you will not have any button rendered in the UI because there is not enough room to render also a button in the medium one. If you will switch to the large one, you will have a 164 by 180 size, which will be rendered on the right side of the card, and you will be eventually able to have some buttons rendered in the UI. And again, like always, users can configure title and icon. So let me switch back to this third option. Let me remove this item and let me add the image one just to show you the card in action. This is with the default image generated by Microsoft with the human generator for SharePoint framework. And as you can see, if I will switch from medium to large, the image will move to the right side of the rendering of my card. Plus, if we go to the actual implementation of this card view, and I'm almost done now, we have the base type, which is BaseImage CardView. The interface will provide the primary text and the image URL, which can actually be the URL of an image or can be based on the required syntax using an asset which can be embedded in my solution. And I can eventually return through the card buttons method one or two buttons, which will be available if and only if I will use the large view. In fact, if I come back here and I refresh this view, we can see that now we have the SharePoint logo, which is taking the whole right area of the screen. I see the two buttons, but if I will switch to the medium size, I will simply see the picture at the top, the image at the top, and the primary text. However, if you want to trigger, for example, a quick view or something else, you can still implement the action right here, the on-card selection. And instead of using an external link action, you can always use a quick view action and still trigger or render a quick view when you do that. So at the very end, three different flavors to render card views based on a predefined rendering provided by Microsoft. And depending on the rendering that you want to use, you will have different options to configure to make your adaptive card extension render in the best way. And that's all for me as well. So back to you, David.
Awesome, Paolo. Thank you so much. That's a great overview for such a new technology in the community. Many are just coming up to speed, and that's going to be super valuable.